Before this video starts,
I need to tell you something. Something important.
you have used Amazon in the last 30 days.
Statistically, almost certainly.
Maybe in the last 30 hours, you've had a package arrive at your door.
You've searched for a product. You've watched something on Prime. You've asked Alexa a question.
Or your company runs its servers on AWS, and you probably thought nothing of it at the time. Because that's what Amazon has done better than any company in the history of capitalism. It has made itself invisible.
It has made itself feel like water, like electricity, like it was simply always there.
What you're about to watch will make you see that water differently for the rest of your life.
Because behind the Smile logo,
Behind the 2-day delivery, and behind the seamless checkout experience, there is more to the story. There is a company that has broken federal law to manipulate the prices you pay, that has lobbied against its own workers' safety,
that has buried a man's body on a warehouse floor,
and told the people standing next to him to keep loading trucks,
that has called thousands of human workers in India artificial intelligence,
and that is now building,
piece by piece, the infrastructure to own not just your shopping cart,
but your internet connection, your cloud data, your doctor's visit, and eventually your very orbit. This is not a hit piece. Every claim in this documentary is sourced, documented, verifiable. We will list every source at the end. This is just the truth. And the truth about Amazon is more extraordinary than anything its press department has ever published.
My name is Lovish. This is Strategy Lens.
And this is the most important business documentary we have ever made. Now, let's begin.
Troutdale, Oregon, a town of 17,000 people on the edge of the Columbia River Gorge. Beautiful country. The kind of place you drive through and feel the weight lift off your chest.
Inside Amazon's PDX9 fulfillment center, a warehouse the size of 28 football fields, a 46-year-old man is doing his job. He is a tote runner. His role is to haul tall stacks of heavy plastic bins through the warehouse on carts for hours on concrete floors in a building where, according to workers posting anonymously online, newly installed soundproof curtains had restricted airflow and created pockets of dangerous heat. At 1:55 p.m., he collapses on the second level of the warehouse in front of his colleagues. The 911 call is placed. Paramedics are coming. And the floor manager tells the workers surrounding the body to turn around. Don't look. Keep loading trucks. A co-worker, CPR trained, ready to help, reportedly asked to intervene. A supervisor turned them away. For over an hour, the man's body lay on the floor of Amazon's warehouse while the conveyor belts kept spinning, while the algorithms kept tracking productivity rates, while packages kept moving toward your door. Amazon said Oregon's OSHA determined the death to be non-work related. Workers at that facility, a facility that a 2018 investigation found had injury rates more than 6 times the national average, said the building had been especially hot since the curtains went in. His name was not publicly released. His family has not spoken. He is a statistic in a system so large that a human life inside it produces at most a brief news cycle and a corporate spokesperson statement expressing deep sadness. We're deeply saddened by the passing of a member of our team, Amazon spokesperson, 4 days after the incident. That's it. That's all they said. And then the machine kept going. This man's death is not the exception at Amazon. It is the symptom. And in the next 55 minutes, we are going to trace that symptom all the way back to its source. Through the financial architecture, through the monopoly tactics, through the artificial intelligence fraud, until you understand completely how the world's 4th most valuable company ended up with a body on the floor of a warehouse in Oregon and told everyone to look away. Because looking away is exactly what Amazon has always counted on you doing. Not today. Real quick, if you just felt something watching that, if you thought I genuinely did not know that, that is what this channel exists to do. Every video on Strategy Lens is built the same way. Full research, real sources, zero spin. If you've never subscribed, right now is the right moment. It costs you nothing, and it is the only way the algorithm shows you the next one. Hit subscribe. Now let's keep going, because it gets much darker from here. To understand how Amazon became what it is,
You need to understand one thing about Jeff Bezos that most people have completely wrong. Jeff Bezos did not want to sell books. He wanted to own the infrastructure of commerce. The books were the Trojan horse. It's 1994. Bezos is 30. He's running a quantitative hedge fund in New York, D.E. Shaw, making serious money. He reads a report that says internet usage is growing at 2300% per year. He stops. He does the math. He realizes the internet is not a communication tool. It is a distribution system. And whoever builds the best distribution system will own the future of commerce. He asks himself one question. What product is easiest to ship, has the most SKUs, and can be used to collect data? The answer is books. Not because he loved books, because books had 3 million different titles. They shipped in a standardized box, and every purchase told him exactly who you were. He quits his job. His boss tries to talk him out of it. Bezos tells him he will regret not trying more than he will regret failing. He and his wife Mackenzie drive across the country. Bezos writing the business plan in the passenger seat and set up shop in a rented garage in Bellevue. He almost named the company Cadabra. His lawyer misheard it as cadaver. So he opened a dictionary and found Amazon, the largest river on earth. He wanted the largest store. Amazon went live on July 16, 1995. Within 2 months, it was shipping books to all 50 states and 45 countries. Within a year, revenues were $15.7 million. Wall Street noticed. Amazon went public in May 1997 at $18 a share. Bezos was immediately attacked. Analysts said the company was a toy, that it would be crushed by Barnes & Noble and Borders. His first shareholder letter became iconic. He told them to stop expecting profits, to stop judging the company on quarterly earnings. Understand that Amazon was investing every cent into building a machine so large, so embedded, so irreplaceable. We believe that a fundamental measure of our success will be the shareholder value we create. Over the long term, he wrote, trust us, we are going to lose money for years. In the short term, a market leader's economic model and performance may be at odds. In plain English, we are going to lose money for years. Trust us. Most investors didn't. The stock crashed repeatedly in the dot-com bust. By 2001, shares had fallen from $106 to $5.97. Amazon was called Amazon.bomb and Amazon.toast in the financial press. Multiple hedge funds shorted it to zero. But Bezos never wavered because he had seen something they hadn't. He had seen what Amazon would become, not in 5 years, but in 25. The expansion that rewrote the rules. 1995, books. 1997, music. 1998, toys. 1999, electronics, tools. 2000, third-party sellers allowed on the platform. The decision that will eventually rewrite the economics. 2002, Amazon Web Services begins as an internal tool. Then someone asks, could we sell access to this? The answer becomes AWS, the greatest pivot in history. 2005, Amazon Prime launches, free 2-day shipping. Prime turns Amazon from a store into a habit. 2007, Kindle. Understand that Amazon owns 500 grocery stores. May 2026, market capitalization, the fourth most valuable company on the planet. Jeff Bezos once said his greatest fear was day 2. It is the moment a company stops acting like a startup, followed by excruciating, painful decline, and starts acting like an entrenched institution. It is the moment a company, day 2 is followed by irrelevance, going out of business. Irrelevance, followed by excruciating. He spent 30 years engineering Amazon to avoid it. What he did not anticipate, what no one anticipated. Followed by excruciating, painful decline. Followed by death. Everything Amazon had built to survive. Here is what they don't teach. The company you think you know, the store, the shipping, the boxes, generates almost no profit in some quarters. Everything Amazon is worth sits in 2 businesses most people have barely heard of, and understanding that is the key to understanding everything that follows. Let me show you something that will change how you read every Amazon headline for the rest of your life. In Q1 of 2026, Amazon reported $181.5 billion. Amazon's reported net revenue in Q1 2026, a 17% jump year over year. The financial press ran headlines about Amazon's dominance in retail, about the scale, about the numbers. Every single one of those headlines was missing the actual story. Here is the actual story. The three Amazons. Amazon is not one company, it is three companies operating under the same logo, and only one of them generates serious profit. Amazon Retail and Logistics, the loss leader. This is the Amazon you know, the one that ships you headphones, the one with the app and the warehouse and the brown boxes. In Q1 2026, this arm generated the majority of that headline number. Here is the part that never makes the headline. After you account for fulfillment costs, warehouse overhead, last mile delivery vans, returns processing, customer service, and the subsidized shipping that Prime members have been trained to expect as their birthright. Amazon's retail division has operated at or near zero profit margin for significant periods of its existence. In some quarters, it is effectively a loss generating machine. Retail does not exist to make money, retail exists to acquire data, to lock customers into Prime, and to create a captive audience. For Amazon's other two businesses, Amazon Web Services, the cash printer. In Q1 2026, AWS generated $37.6 billion in revenue. That is 28% growth, the fastest AWS has grown in 15 quarters. And it did so at an operating margin of approximately 38%. 38% in an industry where 10% is considered healthy. AWS is the backbone of the internet. Netflix runs on AWS. Airbnb, the CIA, NASA, Spotify, LinkedIn, ESPN, and the majority of the Fortune 500 run on AWS. AWS holds a 28% share of the global cloud infrastructure market, more than Azure and Google Cloud combined. And because migrating off AWS is equivalent to transplanting a hospital's nervous system, while the hospital is open and operating, enterprises rarely leave. AWS is the stickiest, highest margin infrastructure business in history. Amazon advertising, the hidden tax. And then there is the business that Amazon almost never wants to talk about in public. Because if you understood how it worked, you might feel differently about every search you've ever done on Amazon's website. Amazon's advertising business is now generating over $70 billion per year in revenue. It does so at near 100% profit margins. Here is how it works. When you search for running shoes on Amazon, the first 3 to 5 results you see are not the best running shoes. They are the running shoes whose manufacturers paid Amazon the most money to appear at the top. Every brand on Amazon, from the smallest startup to Nike itself, must pay Amazon's advertising toll to remain visible. Without paid placement, Amazon's algorithm buries your listing on page 7, where no customer has ever ventured, and lived to tell the tale. Amazon has built a search engine inside a store and then charged every business that wants to exist in that store a recurring fee just to be seen by their own potential customers. The retail division is not the product. You are not the customer. The brands competing for your attention are the customers. And Amazon is simultaneously the landlord, the search algorithm, the logistics provider, the advertising network, and, in many categories, the direct competitor, all at the same time, for the same product, what the market is actually betting on. As of May 2026, Amazon trades at a price to earnings ratio of approximately 32. Analysts who model Amazon's intrinsic value using standard discounted cash flow methodology arrive at a base fair value somewhere between $250 and $350 per share. At current trading levels near $275, Amazon is approximately fairly valued on its current business mix. But the market cap is $2.95 trillion, which means the market is pricing in roughly $1.5 trillion of optionality that does not yet exist. It is pricing in a version of Amazon where AWS's AI infrastructure arm generates monopoly level returns, where advertising compounds at current rates for another decade, where Amazon's satellite internet network achieves the scale Elon Musk's Starlink currently occupies, where healthcare logistics becomes as dominant as e-commerce logistics, where the company that started with books in a garage ends up owning the pipes through which all global data flows. Is that pricing justified? Let's take a look. The answer depends entirely on whether Amazon can execute without getting broken apart first. And right now, in May 2026, that is genuinely the most important open question in global finance. Because the FTC is coming, and they're not coming empty handed. What you are about to hear was so damaging that Amazon's own legal team tried to have it permanently sealed from public records. A federal judge said no. And what spilled out of those documents changed the legal definition of corporate price manipulation in the United States. There is an algorithm inside Amazon's pricing infrastructure so damaging to the company's public image that when the Federal Trade Commission tried to include details of it in their antitrust complaint, Amazon's legal team fought an emergency motion to have those sections permanently redacted. The FTC estimates that Project Nessie extracted over $1 billion. Project Nessie, the invisible price manipulator. Here is how it works. Named internally after the Loch Ness monster, something that lived beneath the surface, something that was never supposed to be seen. And then there is the business that Amazon almost never wants to talk about in public. Amazon's web crawler infrastructure monitored competitor prices in real time across thousands of retail websites. The system had identified a critical behavioral pattern. Most large retailers, the advertising network, and in many categories, the direct competitor. These bots were programmed with simple logic. If Amazon drops their price, we drop ours, all at the same time for the same product. The algorithm would select a product and deliberately inflate Amazon's price. If competitors didn't match, Nessie would quietly roll the price back down. No public trace, no announcement. The experiment simply ended. Amazon executives were reportedly aware that this constituted what they internally described as an unspoken cancer. What you are about to hear was so damaging because it worked. The FTC's antitrust complaint, which has been working its way through the courts since September 2023. The buy box, the white rectangle on every Amazon product page with the add to cart button, tell the tale. The sellers are economically coerced into maintaining artificially high prices everywhere outside of Amazon to protect their Amazon ranking. Amazon acts as an invisible price floor for the entire North American retail market. Amazon's marketplace is built on the backs of third-party sellers. As of 2026, independent sellers account for over 60% of Amazon's total unit sales. They are the inventory. They bear the cost risk. They absorb the returns. They fund the catalog. And Amazon treats them like a captive income stream. Walk through the economics of a small business selling on Amazon in 2026. Referral fee, 8 to 15% of sale price, immediately off the top. Fulfillment by Amazon fees, mandatory if you want the Prime badge and buy box eligibility. Storage fees, monthly, charged per cubic foot of inventory held in Amazon's warehouses. Low inventory surcharge, a fine for not stocking enough. Aged inventory surcharge, a fine for stocking too much. Advertising spend, not optional. Without paid placement, your product does not appear on page 1. Page 1 is where all purchasing happens. Stack these up. Do the actual math. In 2026, Amazon extracts approximately 50 cents from every dollar a typical third-party seller earns. Not 20%, not 30%, 50 cents. The consequence is not abstract. The number of active sellers on Amazon's US platform dropped from 584,000 in January 2025 to approximately 500,000 by early 2026, a 14% contraction in 15 months. The platform has become dangerously top-heavy. Fewer than 8,000 sellers now generate half of all US third-party gross merchandise volume. Amazon has squeezed the very ecosystem that provides its selection, and the ecosystem is beginning to break. The FTC trial, October 2026. The Federal Trade Commission, alongside attorneys general from 17 states, filed its monopolization lawsuit against Amazon in September 2023. The case survived motions to dismiss. Discovery has concluded. A federal bench trial is scheduled for October 2026. The core legal theory: Amazon illegally maintains monopoly power in the online retail superstore market and the online marketplace services market through a sustained pattern of exclusionary conduct, including anti discounting enforcement, self preferencing in search results, and coercive use of its fulfillment and prime infrastructure. In April 2026, sealed emails from a concurrent California Attorney General lawsuit were made public. The emails documented Amazon employees explicitly coordinating with vendors to raise prices at competing retailers, including Walmart and Chewy, not through an algorithm, not implicitly, in writing, in internal emails between named employees. The image Amazon has spent billions of dollars cultivating, a company obsessively committed to lowering prices for consumers, has, under the weight of federal discovery, become something far more complicated. The trial outcome will define Amazon's operational reality for the next decade. Potential remedies include mandatory interoperability requirements, structural limits on how Amazon can operate a marketplace while also competing on it, or, in the most aggressive scenario, a forced separation of AWS from the retail and marketplace operations. Bezos feared day two would arrive through irrelevance. It may arrive instead through a federal judge in Washington, D.C. We have talked about the money. Now we need to talk about the people. The 1.5 million people who go to work inside Amazon's machine every single day. Because the numbers behind Amazon's labor record are, and I'm going to use this word very deliberately, criminal. In 2019, Jeff Bezos stood before his company and made a promise. He pledged that Amazon would become, and I'm quoting him directly, Earth's safest place to work. He set a public target: cut the company's recordable incident rate by 50% by 2025. The announcement generated press coverage. It generated goodwill. It generated the impression of a CEO who understood the human dimension of the empire he had built. And then the data arrived. Amazon's total recorded US warehouse injury rate in 2024: 6.0 injuries per 100 workers. That represents a 10% reduction since 2020. Bezos had promised 50%. They delivered 10%. They missed their own public pledge by 80%. Senator Bernie Sanders launched an 18-month Senate investigation, the most comprehensive federal inquiry into Amazon's labor practices in history. The HELP committee analyzed 7 years of injury data. They interviewed more than 130 Amazon workers. The findings were released in early 2025 and buried beneath AI news cycles. Here is what they found. Amazon warehouse workers suffer serious injuries at 2.6 times the rate of workers at comparable non-Amazon warehouses. Not 10% worse, not 20% worse, 2.6 times worse. In 2022, Amazon employed 36% of all US warehouse workers and was responsible for 53% of all serious warehouse injuries in the country. That gap, 36% of the workers, 53% of the injuries, is not an accident. It is a system design. Amazon's productivity tracking software monitors workers in real time. It tracks how many items are picked per hour. It tracks how long a bathroom break takes. It tracks whether you are on task. Managers receive alerts when individual workers fall below quota, and the quota system, documented in multiple congressional investigations, pushes workers to prioritize speed over safety in ways that their bodies over time cannot sustain. The US Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York is currently investigating whether Amazon has been actively concealing its true injury rates, manipulating internal reporting categories to make the numbers appear cleaner than they are. The Department of Justice's Civil Division is running a parallel inquiry into potential fraud. Neither investigation has concluded. The deaths. Let's talk about the deaths specifically. Because Amazon's position consistently is that worker deaths at its facilities are not work related, OSHA has in some cases agreed, and in each case, workers and their families have told a different story. April 2025, Troutdale, Oregon. A 46-year-old tote runner collapses at PDX 9. Workers told to keep loading. Body on the floor for over an hour. CPR trained colleague turned away. Oregon OSHA, non-work related. Workers, the building was a heat trap. April 2025, Staten Island, New York. A contractor is struck and killed by a truck on the floor of Amazon's JFK 8 fulfillment center. Workers force a temporary shutdown of the facility. It is the second time in 3 years that JFK 8 workers have stopped operations in protest of unsafe conditions. Summer 2022, New Jersey. Three workers die at separate Amazon fulfillment centers within a single month. The deaths trigger a federal investigation by the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. The deaths in Indiana, the deaths in Texas, the heat related incidents, the warehouse that recorded a 26% worker injury rate in a single year, Amazon's response to each, deep sympathy, corporate statements, and the claim that the specific fatality was unrelated to work conditions. The union busting apparatus. While workers were dying, Amazon was running one of the most aggressive and well funded anti union operations in American corporate history. In Durham, North Carolina, Amazon paid labor relations consultants $2,200 per day, verified in federal LM20 disclosure filings, specifically to prevent workers at the cause, Carolina Amazonians United for Solidarity and Empowerment, from forming a union. The tactics? Captive audience meetings, where attendance is mandatory and workers are told why unions are bad. Psychological pressure on organizers. Surveillance of organizing committees. In February 2026, the British Columbia Labour Relations Board delivered its ruling on Amazon's behavior when workers at a Delta BC warehouse voted to unionize. The company's response? It rolled out wage increases, bonuses, and free Prime memberships to every other Amazon facility in the region, deliberately excluding the newly unionized warehouse. The union called it collective punishment. The board agreed. Amazon was ordered to pay over $1 million in retroactive wages. Earth's safest place to work. That was the promise. The data, the deaths, and the documented union busting are the reality. We have covered the monopoly. We have covered the human cost. Now we are going to talk about something that is arguably worse, because it is a form of deception that was aimed directly at you. Amazon told you that some of its most celebrated technology was artificial intelligence. It was not. And what it actually was, behind the curtain, reveals something fundamental about how this company operates. Amazon's mythology is built on innovation, and the mythology is partially deserved. AWS was a genuine revolution. Prime genuinely rewired consumer psychology. The Kindle genuinely disrupted an industry. But for every AWS, there are products that Amazon sank billions into. Products it marketed with the full weight of its PR machine that collapsed so completely they left no visible trace. We are going to walk through the innovation graveyard today, because the pattern of failures tells you something important about the pattern of success. And because several of these failures were not just commercial disappointments, they were deceptions. The Fire Phone, $170 million in surveillance capitalism. In June 2014, Jeff Bezos took the stage personally to announce the Amazon Fire Phone. It had 4 front-facing cameras that tracked your head movements to create a 3D parallax effect on the screen. It had a feature called Firefly. Point your phone camera at any object in the physical world, a coffee mug, a running shoe, a bag of chips, and it would identify the product and offer to add it to your Amazon cart instantly. Take a moment to understand what you are actually looking at here. The Fire Phone was not a smartphone. It was a barcode scanner dressed as a smartphone, designed to convert every visual experience in your physical life into a potential Amazon purchase. It was surveillance capitalism in consumer electronics form. It was designed to make your eyes into Amazon's product catalog. Consumers saw through it. The phone launched at $199. Within 3 months, Amazon slashed the price to 99 cents on a contract. The full unsold inventory was written down at a loss of approximately $170 million. The project was killed. What Bezos learned from the Fire Phone is what made the Echo possible. If you want to be the retail layer over someone's physical life, the device has to be invisible. It has to feel like a convenience, not a transaction. The microphone in your kitchen was the Fire Phone's spiritual successor, more subtle, more successful, and ultimately more profitable. Alexa, a decade ahead, a decade behind. The Amazon Echo launched in late 2014, and Alexa was genuinely revolutionary. Years before Google Home, years before Apple HomePod, Amazon had a voice assistant in millions of homes, building a behavioral data profile on household routines, preferences, and shopping patterns. And then it simply stopped evolving in the ways that mattered. Here is the secret of Alexa that Amazon's financial statements have been quietly revealing for years. The Alexa and Devices division has been one of the greatest capital destroyers in Amazon's corporate history. Devices were sold at or below cost, subsidized, because the monetization thesis was voice commerce. Alexa, reorder paper towels. Alexa, buy me more coffee pods. The actual behavior of hundreds of millions of users, setting timers, asking about the weather, playing music. Voice purchasing rates were devastatingly low. The monetization model that justified the entire division never materialized. Then, in 2022, ChatGPT arrived and the world changed overnight. And Amazon found itself holding a legacy voice assistant built on 2014 keyword recognition architecture, fundamentally incompatible with the fluid conversational intelligence of modern large language models. By 2025, Amazon began charging users for Alexa Plus. The rollout was awkward. The pivot is ongoing and unresolved. Prime Air, 13 years and 16,000 deliveries. On December 1st, 2013, Jeff Bezos appeared on 60 Minutes with anchor Charlie Rose and dropped a bombshell. Amazon was going to deliver packages by autonomous drone within 5 years. By 2018, he showed footage. He made it sound inevitable. It is now 2026, 13 years later. Amazon's Prime Air drone program has managed approximately 16,000 total deliveries in its entire operational history. In 2022, Amazon's own internal cost estimate for a single drone delivery was documented at $484 per package. $484 per package. The average Amazon order value is approximately $47. In February 2026, an Mk-30 hexacopter drone crashed into an apartment building in Richardson, Texas. 13 years, hundreds of millions in investment, and the total cumulative delivery count of Prime Air could be matched by a single mid-sized regional FedEx hub on a slow Wednesday morning. Bezos' 60 Minutes promise was not a forecast, it was theater, and the audience paid for the show for over a decade. Just Walk Out, the AI that was really 1,000 humans in India. This is the one. This is the failure that, when you understand it completely, changes how you hear the word artificial intelligence from a corporate press release for the rest of your life. In 2016, Amazon announced Just Walk Out technology for its Amazon Go and Amazon Fresh grocery stores. The pitch was extraordinary. Walk into the store, grab whatever you want, walk out the door. Cameras embedded in the ceiling would watch you. Computer vision algorithms would track every item you touched. Machine learning systems would build your virtual cart automatically, and your account would be charged seamlessly. No checkout, no cashier, no line. Pure AI powered, frictionless commerce. Amazon opened dozens of Amazon Go locations. It was celebrated in thousands of articles about the future of shopping and the power of artificial intelligence. Jeff Bezos referenced it in earnings calls. It was a showcase. Behind the curtain, over 1,000 workers in India were manually reviewing video footage and labeling transactions. For every 1,000 customer purchases, approximately 700 required human review. The internal performance target for the AI system was 20 to 50 human reviews per 1,000 purchases. They were hitting 700. The artificial intelligence was achieving roughly 10% of its required accuracy. It was human intelligence, paid at a fraction of a US wage, made invisible to the consumer by the architecture of the user experience. By 2024, Amazon began removing Just Walkout from its large format Amazon Fresh grocery stores, replacing it with dash carts, smart shopping carts that customers scan items into themselves. In 2026, the technology is functionally retired in the majority of US locations. This matters beyond Just Walkout. Because if Amazon was willing to label human labor as artificial intelligence in its flagship consumer technology showcase, the product it used to demonstrate its technological leadership to the world, what else in the Amazon ecosystem is performing significantly below the level implied by its marketing? The AWS outage of October 2025, when the internet breaks. Amazon Web Services is not just a cloud product. At 28% global market share, AWS is critical national and international infrastructure. It is the internet's central nervous system, which means when it fails, the failure is not confined to Amazon's customers. It ripples across civilization. October 2025. AWS's US East 1 region, the Northern Virginia data center cluster that handles a disproportionate share of global internet traffic, suffered a cascading failure triggered by a misconfigured update to the DynamoDB API endpoint. What collapsed? Spotify, Venmo, multiple British banking networks, airlines, smart home devices on 3 continents, including connected devices in hospitals. Developer built pipelines globally. The most technically revealing aspect of the outage was not the failure itself. It was what the failure exposed about AWS's architecture. Amazon sells enterprises on multi-region redundancy, the concept that distributing your infrastructure across multiple geographic zones protects you from localized failures. The October 2025 outage revealed that this protection was, in many enterprise deployments, architectural theater. Numerous multi-region configurations had hidden dependencies on US East 1. When Virginia failed, it pulled supposedly independent deployments down simultaneously. The security model enterprises had paid for was not the security model they actually had. In the aftermath, the quiet enterprise migration away from single cloud dependency accelerated. But the outage did something that years of competitor marketing had failed to do. It made enterprises genuinely afraid of their AWS dependency, and fear in enterprise technology procurement eventually becomes action. After everything we have just covered, the monopoly tactics, the deaths, the AI fraud, the outage, you might expect Amazon to be retreating, regrouping, playing defense. It is doing the opposite. In 2026, Amazon is making the single largest infrastructure bet in the history of corporate technology. And whether that bet succeeds or fails will determine who owns the internet. Not just the store, not just the cloud, but the literal infrastructure through which all data on Earth will one day travel. When ChatGPT launched in November 2022 and the generative AI revolution exploded into public consciousness, Amazon was caught in an uncomfortable position. Microsoft had spent billions on OpenAI and had a co-pilot ready to ship. Google rushed Gemini to market. Meta released Llama to the open source community. The conventional response to being caught flat footed in a technology wave is to race to build the missing product, to launch a frontier model, to compete directly on capability. Amazon looked at that playbook and chose a different one entirely. They decided not to compete on who had the smartest AI. They decided to own the infrastructure every AI model would have to live inside. This is the arms dealer strategy. Don't pick sides in the AI model war. Sell weapons, compute, infrastructure, distribution to every army simultaneously, and collect a toll on every transaction, regardless of which side wins. AWS Bedrock, the model marketplace. Amazon Web Services Bedrock is the execution of this strategy. Rather than forcing enterprises to use a proprietary Amazon model, Bedrock is an open platform, a multi-model marketplace. The enterprise value proposition is elegant in its simplicity. Whatever model wins the capability race over the next 5 years, you will be able to access it through Bedrock. As of April 2026, Bedrock is deploying an AI agent every 10 seconds. Amazon's intelligent prompt routing automatically triages enterprise queries, cutting AI operational costs for enterprises by up to 30%. Amazon is not trying to build the best single AI. It is trying to become the non negotiable infrastructure layer that every AI must travel through: the toll road, the grid, the pipe. Custom silicon, the escape from NVIDIA. The second pillar of Amazon's AI strategy is custom silicon. Every major AI company in 2023 was rationing NVIDIA GPU access like it was a controlled substance. Amazon's response was not to complain about NVIDIA, it was to build around them. Trainium and Inferentia are designed specifically to run AI workloads in the AWS environment. The chips are not trying to beat NVIDIA's H100 on raw benchmark performance. They are trying to make running AI workloads in AWS cheaper and faster than running them anywhere else, creating an economic lock-in. The bet is paying off at a scale that is startling even to people who follow this industry closely. Amazon's custom silicon business has secured over $225 billion in revenue commitments. And then, in the single most significant AI infrastructure partnership announcement of 2026, AWS locked in a multi-year, multi-billion dollar agreement with OpenAI. Yes, OpenAI, Microsoft's foundational AI partner. OpenAI committed to running significant portions of its compute workloads on Amazon's Trainium infrastructure, making AWS the exclusive third-party cloud distribution provider for OpenAI's frontier models. Amazon is not competing with OpenAI. Amazon is charging OpenAI rent. A $2.95 trillion company looking for its next wave of growth cannot find it in the places it already dominates. It has to go somewhere new, somewhere large, somewhere with enough friction and inefficiency that Amazon's Flywheel can generate the same disruption it created in retail and cloud. In 2026, Amazon has identified two such places. One is 550 kilometers above your head. The other is your body. Amazon Leo, the orbital internet. For years, Amazon sat on a Federal Communications Commission license to build a constellation of low Earth orbit satellites, a direct competitor to Elon Musk's Starlink. The project, internally called Project Kuiper, moved slowly. Bezos was distracted. The satellite industry was complicated. In 2026, Amazon officially rebranded the initiative as Amazon Leo and began full-scale deployment. Using a combination of launches from ULA's Vulcan Centaur rockets, SpaceX's Falcon 9, and Ariane Space, Amazon has deployed over 300 satellites into low Earth orbit and is accelerating toward its full constellation target. CEO Andy Jassy has claimed Amazon Leo will deliver 2 times the downlink performance and 6 times the uplink performance of current Starlink offerings. But here is what the announcement press coverage almost universally missed. Amazon Leo is not fundamentally a consumer internet product. It is a proprietary enterprise data infrastructure. The satellites are designed to integrate seamlessly with AWS ground stations, creating a secure off-grid data pathway from orbital infrastructure directly into Amazon's cloud servers, bypassing the public internet entirely. Governments, defense contractors, multinational corporations, they will be able to move their most sensitive data from space to Amazon servers without a single packet ever touching a public network node. The partnerships already secured confirm the thesis. Vodafone, AT&T, NASA, and a commitment to power in-flight Wi-Fi for half of Delta Airlines fleet beginning in 2028. Amazon is not selling satellite internet. It is building the infrastructure of a private, secure internet, one that runs from its satellites through its chips to its servers, end to end. If Amazon Leo achieves its ambitions, the company will not merely own the toll road for commerce, it will own the airspace above the toll road. Amazon Health, your body is next. Amazon's acquisition of One Medical, a primary care company, was reported as Amazon's attempt to disrupt healthcare. That framing, while not wrong, undersells what is actually being built. Consider the infrastructure Amazon is assembling piece by piece, connection by connection. Amazon Pharmacy handles your prescription fulfillment, leveraging the same last mile logistics network that delivers your packages to deliver your medications faster and cheaper than any traditional pharmacy. One Medical handles your primary care visits, gathering your diagnostic data, symptom history, and chronic condition records. AWS Health Lake stores and processes that health data at cloud scale, applying machine learning to identify clinical patterns and population health trends. And every one of these touch points, every prescription, every diagnosis, every doctor's appointment, every health metric flows through the same corporate infrastructure that already knows what you buy, how fast you consume it, what you search for, what you watch, and what you listen to. The data profile Amazon is building on a Health Lake enabled consumer is not a shopping profile. It is a complete biographical data portrait of a human life from the moment they became a Prime member. Regulators have barely begun to grapple with what this means for privacy, for health insurance markets, for employer employee power dynamics, or for the concentration of intimate biological data inside a single corporation that is already the subject of a federal monopoly trial. The future Amazon is trying to build is one in which it is your pharmacist, your doctor, your cloud provider, your internet connection, your store, your streaming service, and eventually, through Amazon Leo, your ISP, simultaneously, inescapably, profitably. Whether the world will allow it is the defining regulatory question of the next decade. After everything we have covered, and we have covered a lot, let me give you the honest assessment, not the bearish take and not the bullish take, the truth. Amazon's core flaw is not its technology, which is often extraordinary. It is not its logistics, which is genuinely unmatched. It is not its financial scale, which is real and durable. Amazon's core flaw is that it has optimized so relentlessly for extraction from sellers, from workers, from regulators, from consumers, that it has built a structural trust deficit that compounds year over year and that no amount of PR can sustainably neutralize. The seller ecosystem is fracturing. 84,000 fewer active sellers in 15 months, declining catalog quality, counterfeit infiltration so severe that Amazon's own 2025 report admitted to seizing 15 million fake products without disclosing how many reached customers. The platform is becoming a marketplace dominated by Chinese dropshippers and AI-generated listings, and the authentic brands that built its reputation are calculating with increasing seriousness what life outside Amazon's walls might look like. The AWS architecture is showing 30 years of scaling debt. The October 2025 outage was not a freak event. It was a symptom of an infrastructure that has grown faster than its own engineers can fully map. The transition to AI native pipelines, replacing traditional software development with autonomous AI systems, has created internal retention crises among senior engineers who feel reduced to reviewers of machine generated code and who are receiving calls from every major technology competitor on the planet. The regulatory storm is no longer approaching. It has arrived. The October 2026 FTC trial is the most consequential legal proceeding in Amazon's history. The California AG emails, the British Columbia Labor Board, the DOJ fraud probe, the OSHA citations, the Senate investigation. These are not isolated events. They are converging. And the human crisis will not self-resolve. The gap between Earth's safest place to work and the documented reality is not closing fast enough to be credible, and the investigations and lawsuits accruing around it are not going to disappear. What Amazon must do and what it will take. The solution is not radical. It does not require breaking up the company or abandoning the flywheel. It requires a fundamental strategic shift in how Amazon treats the people and businesses inside its ecosystem. Amazon must move from an extraction model to a partnership model with third-party sellers, reducing fee complexity, eliminating punitive anti-discounting enforcement, and allowing sellers to build sustainable businesses on the platform rather than surviving in spite of it. It must make warehouse safety metrics transparent, independently audited, and structurally tied to operational targets that are actually honored rather than announced. It must be honest about what its AI systems can and cannot do, marketing transparency that matches technical reality. And it must engage with regulators as a participant in the governance of the infrastructure it has built, rather than as an adversary to be managed, because the alternative is having governance imposed on terms it will like far less. The companies that survive at Amazon scale for the next 50 years are not the ones that extract the maximum value from every relationship in every quarter. They are the ones that generate enough trust from sellers, from workers, from regulators, from enterprises, from consumers to maintain the social license to operate at that scale indefinitely. Amazon has the financial resources to make that shift. The question is whether it has the institutional will. So, what is Amazon in May 2026? It is a logistics empire that processes 4.5 million packages every day through a network that is simultaneously the greatest operational achievement in the history of commerce, and a machine that has broken human bodies and been ordered to not look. It is a cloud computing infrastructure so embedded in global civilization that when it fails, it doesn't hurt Amazon. It hurts hospitals, banks, airlines, and classrooms. It has made itself indispensable in the most profound and frightening sense of that word. It is an advertising empire that has transformed search from a utility into a toll booth, and that has done so seamlessly that most of the people paying the toll don't realize they are paying it. It is an AI infrastructure company making the smartest strategic bet of the AI era, not on the model, but on the road. And it is winning that bet, signing OpenAI, building its own chips, and positioning itself as the non negotiable compute layer for the entire industry. It is a company facing the most serious legal, regulatory, and ethical reckoning in its 30-year history. One that could, in the worst case for Amazon, force a structural restructuring of how its businesses are allowed to operate together. Jeff Bezos feared day two. He built the entire architecture of Amazon to prevent it. He succeeded spectacularly at building a machine so large it cannot easily be stopped. What he perhaps did not fully account for is that machines of that scale generate friction. Friction in their supply chains, friction in their labor relationships, friction in their regulatory environments, friction in the trust of the consumers and businesses they serve. That friction, accumulated over 30 years of optimization without sufficient conscience, is now the central strategic challenge facing the most valuable company on earth. Amazon is not going to collapse. It is too embedded, too essential, too vast. But the empire is cracking. The fractures are real. And the next decade will determine whether Amazon is remembered as the company that built the infrastructure of the 21st century or the company that built a monopoly so aggressive that the world eventually had no choice but to break it apart. That is the real story of Amazon. Not the smile, not the boxes, not the customers love us. The real story is a $2.95 trillion machine that started with books in a garage in 1994, quietly became the plumbing of the global economy, and is now standing at the most consequential inflection point in its history, with federal prosecutors on one side, a $200 billion AI bet on the other, and a trail of broken sellers, injured workers, and documented deceptions behind it. That is a story worth understanding. That is a story worth sharing. And that is exactly why we made this video. If this video gave you something that changes how you see this company, share it. One person. That's all. Because the best way to make sure content like this keeps getting made is to prove that people actually want the truth. Subscribe to Strategy Lens if you are not already. Drop the next company you want us to expose in the comments below, and we will see you in the next one.